So welcome to our first Fireside chat in the Movement Online Academy. We have Sonja Johansson joining us today. And we're going to be chatting about Feldenkrais, Pilates, and how to move better, feel better. Thanks for coming, everybody, and welcome, Sonja.
Thank you so much. We had a little chat. Well, Craig got to talk a little bit about what his interest of being here is, but I want to ask the other two who are here on our Zoom call. You don't have to tell us your whole history, but just raise your hand into the screen. Have you done Feldenkrais, the method? Yeah, I've got a hands up. Yes, I know that you have, Alex. I've actually been in the same class as you. But then the burning question is, have you had some experience with Pilates?
Yep.
You have? Oh, great. Okay. And Alex, yes. All right. So I don't know that.
One lesson.
One whole lesson. Did you walk out in the middle of it, or was it not a whole lesson?
Find out about
because the Pilates method, people say to me, oh, it's so similar what you do, Pilates and Feldenkrais. And then I have to say, well, have you done them both? Because they're not really, they're quite dissimilar. And I actually created a bit of a chart because I thought I would go through some of the elements to discuss how they are not the same. They're just sort of considered movement practice, or Feldenkrais is much more about developing the interconnectedness of your brain to your movement. And I think whether you have an injury, whether it's orthopedic or brain-based, actually I'm in the tropics right now, and I'm at a beautiful resort. And you obviously, if you're here for a while, you end up stranger talking. There was this very tall, live, handsome fellow walking around the property, and it was really evident that he'd had a neurological event, in that he appeared to be someone who had had a stroke, meaning his whole left side underdeveloped, his foot dragged, his left arm does not swing. It is, as we, if you remember the period, some of you do, polio, is that you would see someone whose one leg was completely normal and the other leg was, we say, emaciated. It just didn't develop. And that's how he is. And his was because of a spinal surgery. They cut a nerve and then he was paralyzed. But I was talking to him about Feldenkrais because he's actually, before the surgery, was an Olympic athlete. How's that?
Wow.
Or, yeah, you go in there with the neurosurgeon, it's got some great ideas, you've got this tumor, let's get rid of it. And that's what he ended up with. So I was talking to him about he's got some great therapists, but he says, the physical therapists, they have good intentions, but they're not really understanding the complexity of the neuromotor system. And that just means that they're not really considering the sensory element. And that's where my work, because I have been doing Feldenkrais and Pilates, like as a student, being a participant, for 30 years. And I've now been teaching Feldenkrais for more than 20 years. And for a long time, those two practices were very different. And one was about effort and exercise and certain muscle groups and holding your belly tight, keeping your spine very stiff. And the other one was about letting everything go. And actually, I'm talking about Pilates and I'm talking about Feldenkrais. That's not what they are. So I'm not sure if anyone's interested, but I thought we could have, if something in this comparative conversation I'm going to have strikes you as, oh, well, that's interesting, or that can't be true because I do these practices and it doesn't seem that what my teacher does. And that's, of course, what it comes down to, is what your teacher's training is, what their influence has been. Because I've worked with some Pilates instructors who I think, gosh, they must have had a Feldenkrais training in their past, because they talk very much in the whole system working as one, and that they always use the language of sensation, which is the kinesthetic sense. And when I ask them, I'm surprised that they haven't done Feldenkrais. But then, of course, I come across Pilates instructors who run their class like a boot camp. and then I think, I'm not really fond of that, so I'll, maybe not come back next week. But so I thought we'd start with some fundamental things, because in Pilates, there's this idea of breath is the topic. So that's going to be the first element, that your breathing is particularly prescribed. So they dictate when you breathe in, when you breathe out in relation to a given movement. Often there's a forced exhale. So the exhale is you push out as much air to elicit a very big inhale. And partly there's this idea that maybe if you exhale hard enough, your abdominal muscles will tighten up. Does that sound like something you might have heard?
Yes.
Yes. Now, in the Feldenkrais method, we don't have a prescribed way of breathing based on whatever movement you happen to be doing, that it's we say it's appropriate to the task. So if I'm strolling towards breakfast, because I go to my favorite cafe on Sunday, my breath should be light and easy. Or if I'm just sitting under a tree, contemplating my navel, maybe meditating, my breath would be light and easy. But if I'm pushing the couch from one side of the lounge room to the other, you would expect my breath to be a little more forceful, right? So, Craig, you say that you're walking 7 miles a day, which is fantastic. Now, whether you're doing that at a comfortable, relaxed pace, or sometimes you go a bit quicker, we would expect your breath to modulate. And that's how we are in Feldenkrais. We want the breath to adapt, and we want it to kind of begin to reduce, meaning you're breathing more softly, not so deep, whenever possible. So you have a much more relaxed way of breathing, because you're breathing in what we say is like the parasympathetic, which has to do with your autonomic nervous system. And in the Feldenkrais method, we even do some pretty wacky things, which I've added to my Pilates practice, which is, everyone knows you breathe in, you get bigger, you breathe out, you get smaller. I'm talking about, your trunk, right? But in the Feldenkrais method, sometimes we do things like breathe out, exhale, make yourself as big as possible. Breathe in and squeeze your chest. So we really try and mix these things up. And I always add, wherever possible, other ways of dictating what your breathing is doing by adding humming or shushing, or counting is a great thing to do. So as you're, whatever movement you're doing, can you continue to count as high in number as you can on one single breath? That's another way of knowing that you're optimizing. Yeah. So anyone want to talk about breath, questions, or things
questions
that you've noticed? Yeah.
No.
Are you breathing is always a question. I mean, tell me, does this?
Yeah, when it's difficult, when something's difficult, you notice that you hold your breath.
Yeah. And I mean, we have these differing based on what we are currently, our knowledge base is. In my early phase of teaching the Feldenkrais method, it was like, oh, never hold your breath. You've always got to have breath come and go, like the ocean. It's like, think of a pool of water stagnating. Oh my God, you can't hold your breath. But actually, as I was saying, I'm on vacation. I'm here at the Caribbean Sea. It's a really good idea when your head goes under the water. It's a really good idea to hold your breath, right? If you don't, you're in a lot of trouble. And we do some underwater photography, and I've got to learn to hold my breath for longer. And in the sports world, there's a lot of interesting stuff going around maximizing your CO2. So actually breathing less and less and less, so that your muscles can take advantage of your oxygen, because CO2 is like the magic potion. It's like a nitrous for your muscles. Nitrogen, is that what I mean?
Yeah, the big hype is that Willem Hof, is it?
Wim Hof, yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know much, but I wonder whether
it's called the
he's come
Iceman.
from the Boteco.
He's from Holland. He's called the Iceman.
What's he do?
He's got some breath work, but then he also talks about immersing yourself in ice as well. Yeah. but I haven't looked enough into it.
And I can tell you there's also trends, and a part of my name, Sonja Johansson, we're Nordic people on one side of my family, and that's sitting in a sauna, sweating up a storm, and then jumping into an ice lake.
Yeah.
But this is things that those particular people have done their whole life. So there's a bit of a problem if you start to do that later in life and your system doesn't know how to do that. You might have a heart attack.
Today on our walk, my dog and I, we were walking down I live right on Puget Sound, which is considered subarctic. It's 50 degrees. And we noticed the New Year's Day swimmers were out in the water with their orange float cans behind them, swimming along the shoreline. And I stopped and talked to one of them. And they said they were doing a 3-mile swim, and they were not wearing wetsuits, and they were just wearing, like a swimsuit. And one of the women was wearing her bikini, and her skin was just bright red, and she was like breathing normally.
Wow.
But so you're talking about breathing. I was just kind of like, she must have done this quite a bit, but
absolutely, yeah. She didn't wake up New Year's Day go, hey, I got a hangover, I'm going to go jump into Puget Sound.
Yeah, but it's 50 degrees in the summertime. It may hit 53. But we have quite a few swimmers out there doing that. But going back to the breath work, we have a lot of hills, and I do a lot of work, deep breathing, going up the hills. And as I hit the top, I kind of pause and actually get a clearing, breathe in deep through my nose and exhaling heavily through my mouth until I can kind of stabilize my breath so I'm not panting as much. And then when I get into a rhythmic, back into a more stable breathing cycle, then my dog and I always walk with my dog, Sophie, because after my brain tumor, she was the one that actually has been my coach and helping me get back into the walking mode again. We do 5 to 7 miles a day, rain or shine. And so she's the one that kind of watches over me. And so she kind of helps me pace myself. And if I get a little bit out of sync, she'll actually sit down on the ground and wait till I get my rhythm of my breathing back into normal cycle before she'll allow me to take off again. So she's really in tune to my breathing.
So can I give everyone some things to do the next time you're going for a walk? Like not a walk to the refrigerator, like a walk somewhere. Hopefully you're not carrying anything on your shoulders. So based on your metabolic rate, metabolic means, are you sitting in a chair? Are you walking upstairs? How much energy does your body need for this given activity? Your exhale and your inhale, you'll find that the more exertion, your exhale will get longer. Your inhale will be quicker and deeper, but your exhale, you want to elongate it. And as I was saying, I often, because I have a dance and theatre background, so a lot of what I was trained in was voice production. So if you're walking where people can't hear you, so who cares anyway. Try walking and counting. You could count your steps if you want, or you could just count in a rhythmic metronome, something that you'll be able to remember that rhythm. And notice how high you can go before you need to breathe in again. And do that at the beginning of the walk and at the hill phase. Like if you go from, pretty simple to, or I've been walking for a long time, my metabolic needs have increased. Notice if you're able, if you probably, if you can get to 10 on an easy stretch, maybe as you go uphill, you can only get to 5. And what you would try to do, and you can do it like in your home, just sitting around, is that you just try to count higher and higher without getting that strain in your throat and feeling that the breath can come in at the end of your highest number, and don't get too competitive with yourself. So that's one thing that comes from a system called the Carl Stahl method. He worked with a lot of folk who had pulmonary issues, and it was just a very simple exercise, and it's quite powerful. Another thing, if you're walking or running, doesn't have to be running, is that if you can follow your in-out breath, not counting this time, just like, oh, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. If you can catch the moment that you breathe in, notice whether you're stepping on your left foot in that moment or your right foot. Because if I could follow you with a handy cam, like a hidden camera, there's a likelihood for all of us, when we're thinking of other things, so we've got somewhere to be, oh, running late, better hurry up. You are always breathe, the beginning of the first part of your exhale is always on your left or right leg. So once you've worked that out, because runners need to look out for this, because when you exhale, of course, you collapse a little bit. You don't have as much internal volume. You're going to find you posturally, you're going to collapse. Maybe always, for me, I always collapse on my right side. When I am just standing still, I'm a little bit more compacted, squishy if I'm standing on my right leg versus my left leg. And I think all of us are, except for Angela, we're all chronologically enhanced. You know, we are kind of thinking, what of all these things that I've done over the course of my life added to or subtracted from my ability to be pretty symmetrical? And that's, you know, going back to that fellow who was very asymmetric. I have to tell you, where I am, we're on the coastline in the Caribbean and it's all stone, it's lava. So to get into the ocean, you have to climb down a ladder. And he's wandering around. I'm like, he's looking for a place to climb down the ladder. He can't use his arm. And of course, my first thing is, I'm going to have to help you, aren't I? I was like, none of my business, but yeah, being able to always be able to, at any moment, rely on your left leg or your right leg with a certain sort of consistency. Think of a simple structure of columns and cross beams.
Yeah. I'm going to try this on my treadmill next time I'm going for
much easier to notice on your treadmill because you don't have to worry about running into
I can make an incline and
yes. And you could even at the beginning of your exhale make a little ha, because then you go ha, oh, left, ha. I'm always hitting the beginning of my exhale on that footstep, that stride.
So interesting. Thanks for sharing. Any questions about all that?
Well, one of the things that go ahead.
No, he doesn't.
Alex, no, did we cut you off? Sorry.
It's all right. I was thinking about, I've been doing a bit of cycling, so that applied to that as well.
I think so, because I suspect, because I know it to be true of myself and many of my clients, especially on a stationary bike, probably less so on a proper bike. I call stationary bikes only for people who can't stand on their own 2 feet, because it is not a balanced activity. Is on a bike, you're probably always pushing with a little more exertion with one leg, your weight-bearing leg, not your dominant leg, your weight-bearing leg. So you'll feel it much more on a stationary bike because you don't have to do any of the trunk, the torso stabilization on the stationary bike because it's not going to fall over, right? So you might find yourself, you know, putting your foot through the front phase of your cycle, the same foot each time you exhale.
Yeah, I've been riding with a bit of a sore left hip, so I'm finding my right is being used a lot more. Yes.
And if you can tolerate it, I'm not sure if you feel balanced enough. When you're on a bike, don't sit down if you can. If you're on a stationary bike, never sit down. Because all it does is if you sit down, you end up working on your hump, the thing that you spent all that time at your computer working on. But when you're on a bicycle, as much as you can, be upright, be off your bottom.
Yeah, it's still very uncomfortable sitting down on the bike.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Don't sit down. Don't do it.
Especially going to ride for an hour down to Kilburg and back.
So I'm going to encourage everyone, you guys here, and those watching the replay, to post in the comments under this video your aha moments in trying this out, walking and riding.
Yeah, come back and tell us what you discovered. And it's actually very difficult because your breath is really easy to notice as you're sitting watching this video, watching me, probably. When you lie down to a Feldenkrais lesson, it's quite easy to know, oh, that's the beginning of my exhale. That's the beginning of my inhale. It's very hard to be able to be sure about the end of the exhale because it sort of peters out into nothing. And actually we know that there's 4 phases in the breath cycle. Clearly there's an in breath and an out breath, but there's a pause between those two, and there's a pause between in that cycle. And it just depends on whether you have a long pause about, that's going back to what kind of metabolic need do you have at this moment. But when you're moving and walking, it's much harder to go, oh, that's the end of my out breath, because you're thinking of other things.
I do have 3 taster breathing lessons on my YouTube channel, so I'll post that link below. You can go check that out. They're like the start of longer lessons. Were you going to say something else, Craig, just before?
Well, I was just going to say is one of the things I've been also doing is I've been studying the Hawaiian culture, and I've been getting into Hawaiian chanting. And so as I'm walking, there's a couple chants I use that when I'm by myself, so people can't hear me, that I try to use the whole chant in one breath. And so that whole long thing. So as I walk, it's a sentence that you kind of repeat and then keep going, and then you can take your deep breath, and that really helps strengthen, if you will, the breath cycle. And the first time I did it, I thought I was going to pass out because you're taking that deep breath.
Going back to the Wim Hof, now I don't know what his influences are because, to be honest, I don't know his work, but talking about the minimization of your breath it's really important when you're doing that breath training, whether it's the original Buteyko or the oxygen advantages, what the Patrick McMillan, I think his name is that you don't let yourself exhale so much that the next inhale, you can hear it, or there's a pull of air. It must always be that the following inhale should be like nothing.
Okay.
Just like a breeze comes through the room. Yeah. Or else you've pushed yourself too far in that respect, because it's breath. It's breath is life,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, if there's no questions more about breath, or we've sort of exhausted that conversation, I want to talk about the planes of movement. So in a lot of traditional Pilates, and traditional means that that person was trained by not Joseph Pilates, but one of his direct descendants, and that something happens is that people think, oh, it's like a museum piece, I've got to exactly teach what he taught. Is that they stay on a very, what's called sagittal, and sagittal is like railroad tracks. And that means all the movements, or most of the movements, are just forward and backward. But humans don't move like that. And that's where one of the issues, one of the non-functional elements in a lot of traditional classical Pilates means that there's very little rotation. And I don't mean necessarily, of course, I mean rotation, your hip joints and your shoulder joints, but I mean through the central axis. And the central axis for me is your torso. Everything from the crown of your head to the pelvic outlet at the bottom of your pelvis. So what makes you a human, what makes you a fully functional human, is that when you walk, your shoulder girdle and your pelvic girdle counter rotate. And that's something that you learn to do probably 3 years old. Up until then, actually, toddlers can't rotate. That's why they sort of look like, the Easter Island statues. They kind of move like that. That's what a toddler does. They literally list, because they haven't developed, not that they have to learn it, but the ability to keep their head up, their feet, their head over their feet, and allow enough freedom within their spinal complex so that the shoulder girdle, pelvic girdle are actually counter rotating. And if I had I have a roller. Look, I go on vacation with my roller. That counter twist creates like not a feedback system, but a perpetual motion. So that the first step you make, it takes more effort, and the subsequent steps after that become like this, perpetual motion, like, the drinking bird. It can just do that all day long.
Yeah.
So when you're doing any kind of regimented exercise, so I think Feldenkrais doesn't fit into that, is to be sure that the counterweighting, opposing left, right. So I'm not a fan of a lot of exercise that says do 20 on the left and do 20 on the right, because you create this unnatural division between the two sides of your body. Because the musculature on the left and right side of your body, although they have no physical attachments, there's no muscle of the body that crosses over. That your brain is under the radar, balancing the left and right all the time, and when it stops doing that, you're in trouble. Whether it's because of a catastrophic event that happened to this fellow, or you just start to, like I've got a little drop foot. Drop foot is because the the nerves that go down the sciatic nerve have just been a little impinged in my lower back, and my foot, just every now and then I'll hit a step, or that, those toes they're not as sprightly and they don't lift up. So I often start my Pilates classes with a lot of soft sensory stimulation. If you ever have you been to a doctor and they're trying to work out whether you've got a disc impingement, and they either run their finger, a feather, or what's the other thing they run over your skin? A pin. A pin. Yeah, because they're trying to detect where the dermatomes are the runways around your body where the nerves that exit your spine take information up to the brain, versus the motor is where information goes from the brain to the muscles to create movement. So those two things should always be in a very good marriage. Are we allowed to say that now? They're in a very, maybe not a marriage, whatever, complement.
Yeah.
Brilliant conversation.
So interesting. I could chat for hours or days about this stuff.
Yes, I could talk for hours and days. I often have.
Maybe we need a longer fireside chat next time when we invite you back. Do you want to share what's happening this week with everybody?
I would love to. So I'm very excited. And, they say, I don't know who said it, Maya Angelou probably said it, every day do something that scares you. Like today I did something that scared me. I think I have my New Year's offer ready to go. And what it is 5 20-minute videos that you can do, well, over the course of that week. Probably they'll be available. They'll arrive in your inbox. But what those videos are is a pretty unique distillation of, as I said, my 20 plus years of teaching Pilates and Feldenkrais, where I've discovered that although I love Feldenkrais, and I say, when people say, oh, what skin cream do you, and I'm 51, they're like, oh, what skin cream do you use? I'm like, well, it's really the Feldenkrais method, first and foremost, that allows me to move in a way that I don't think I moved even as a dance student. I now can kind of, I'm not saying I'm as flexible, but I do challenging things, and I feel confident in my body's ability to do those things. So what this 20-minute classes is a distillation of functional movement, conditioning movement. So it will address your musculature system, but with a Feldenkrais lens. So I'm calling it honest exercise because I work in the gym environment and I hear crazy things being told from trainers to clients. And I think that just naming a muscle or saying I'm doing a glute workout is really diminishing the human potential. And muscles don't work individually, they work in complexes and systems. And to start to name muscles is to sort of say, you know, can you currently tell me all the organs in your body that are working right now and what they're currently doing and producing? It's like, well, that's ridiculous. Why would you even bother having that conversation? Because to stand up uses a good amount of your muscular system on a very minimal level. Walking is a great, well-rounded, but it's a low intensity. So I'm doing a lot of cross-lateral breath work. So I hope you'll give it a try, and I'd love to hear your feedback. And I'm very proud that I have entered what century is it? Have we gone to another century? No, it's a decade, sorry. the 21st century, that I can finally offer my teaching online in a on-demand method, and that Angela's helped me learn how to somehow automate it. I think I don't actually have to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning if someone wants the you know, although someone did do that to me the other day, like, I tried to do this on your website and it didn't. I was like, well, that's because I was asleep. I can't answer your email when I'm asleep, but maybe I will eventually.
No, you won't.
I have an assistant somewhere in the world on a different time zone.
Yeah.
That's how we'll all be interconnected.
Do you want to put the link in the chat? I don't know.
I do. Is it in the chat? It's in the chat. I can do it again.
Yeah, pop it in again, because I think people don't see if they joined after you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions about that? Fran, have you got anything to share? How has it been?
No, I'm mostly Pilates, some Feldenkrais, a lot of water fitness, and a little bit of Tai Chi. So I'm just interested in the comparisons that she's sharing.
Great.
Fantastic. What's been your biggest hurdle with Pilates? Can I ask you? Or not biggest, just a hurdle.
Working when I'm coming back from things like right now, I've got a left meniscal tear, and I've had back surgery. So it's finishing rehab and re-entering and doing what you can and staying balanced. So it's just more idiosyncratic than that.
And not trying to go back to the intensity that you left before you sure, because that's foolhardy. But I'm kind of intrigued, because I've got the ocean just out here and a swimming pool. Like, maybe I could create a Pilates Feldenkrais water hybrid.
Oh.
Well, we've got Aqua Pilates certification that we do, which is really kind of neat. Working with Ann Brunell out of Chicago.
Someone's already done it, damn it. Okay, then I have to innovate a different way. There's these great ladders here. So I've now created, like in the Pilates with the equipment work, you've got sometimes a ladder or Cadillac. I now have these ladders that go into the ocean. So I'm going to do a little bit of water work, a little bit of land base. Of course, you need to have a swimming pool. Not many people have that in their homes.
I've got a blow up pool, but I don't know if that works the same.
But another element is that I'm a big fan of using what you have available. So I do love a Pilates. Some of you know the Cadillac. I've actually got one at home that flips up and slides into the wardrobe. But who has that at home? Very few people. So my favorite tools are the floor, a wall, and a towel. And you can do an enormous amount of self-resisted body weight, balance, complex work with those three. I mean, who doesn't have some people don't really have it because they got covered in paintings or something, but a column, a towel for resistance, and you've got a real interesting workout waiting for you.
I've got a TRX system that I put up in the wall along the track of the wall, and I find that's really helpful from a body weight perspective and a twist. Just because I've got 2 rotator cuffs that are giving me problems from over swimming when I was younger. I've got a recovering. They wanted to do a full replacement with cadaver parts. The 2.5 centimeter tear in this shoulder and a 1 centimeter tear in this shoulder, and I'm recovering without it. But I'm, using the TRX has been really helpful in helping build up the shoulder muscles around the tear and still strengthen the.
And continue, Craig, to do a lot of external rotation as much. If you go into internal, you're going to re-tear yourself.
Right. Exactly.
So loading through the outside of your hand into the straps, because I do love the TRX, and I didn't bring mine with me, so I'm going to try and rig one up, like just ask for some ropes.
Yeah, I'm going to physical therapist for the left shoulder, and she's ecstatic that I have one that I use.
Yeah. Because the TRX doesn't lie. Unlike the Pilates machine, because you know this, Fran, you work on the Cadillac. Sorry, not the Cadillac, the reformer. Yeah. If you have your two hands or your two legs hooked at the same time, your dominant arm or leg, your stronger, will do more than 50% of the work. Which is why you always have to do it at least sometimes 1-1-1-1, or else So there's another clues. If you don't know what we're talking about, jump on a reformer. You get a chance.
Well, this has been fabulous. Thanks so much, Sonja.
You're very welcome.
I will drop the link below the video for those watching the replay for her 5-day extravaganza.
Wait for it. And there's going to be the beautiful Caribbean Sea in the background. So even if you don't want to do the exercises,
just watch the video.
All day I'm looking at gray water, gray clouds and gray water.
Oh, lovely. You could send a corresponding.
I'm on the water, but it's been all gray and rainy. So
it's like an Ingmar Bergman film, very moody. There's some beauty in that.
Well, there is. During the summertime, we have water. We can go out kayaking. And I got a 3-mile kayak across the sound to another island, and we've got orcas that come by that we can see, and we even had humpback whales come down the sound.
Oh,
golly!
So it's quite the wildlife with a lot of eagles and osprey in the summertime.
Awesome!
Enjoy it. Some of you have been hearing my tree frogs in the background.
Cookies.
Tree frogs. Is that what they're called? Cookies?
Oh, in Hawaii on the Big Island, they're croakies. Croakies.
That sounds, yeah.
I woke up this morning outside and heard tree frogs outside on the ground here in Seattle, which I've never heard them in the 5 years I've lived where I'm living. I have not heard one at our condos.
I thought amphibians would find it too cold. They're cold-blooded animals, aren't they?
January 1st, Seattle.
Wow.
Well,
Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And thanks for those watching the replay. I'm really looking forward to bringing some more presenters in. And this is your community. So if you know of anyone that you would like to be invited, let me know and I'll see if I can reach out to them. In lead up to the Feldenkrais Summit, I'm hoping to get some of the speakers from the summit, Cynthia Allen, come in and chat with us. So yeah, let me know and I'll see if I can tee it up.
So the therapist I worked with, Angela, here in Seattle was Nancy Holler.
Oh, yes.
I know Nancy Holler. Yeah. She's the head of our organization.
Back on my feet again, literally.
Great.
Yeah. Fantastic. And of course, she knows firsthand. You know her history, don't you?
Yeah. Well, reach out to her and see if we can get her. But this is, really just have, casual conversation, let the expert, ask them questions and share with us. So this is just the beginning of our wonderful community. So
I was able to connect this time.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
So you found your way around okay?
I did.
Yeah. There's just a little bit of a learning curve, but once you know your way around, then All right. Oh, my dad's asking it maybe a stretch, but how about Wim Hof? Well, we could always try.
You can't get cold enough there to do Wim Hof.
Here in Adelaide? Yeah, maybe
I don't think it's ever going to be cold enough.
Asking for a fireside chat.
I see. Sorry, I didn't. Sorry. You never know.
You never know.
Can only ask.
Can only ask, yeah.
He's about breathing techniques, so he actually does ice baths, so you don't need particularly icy conditions.
Okay, right. Well, you know, there's a whole string of research now about the use of cryotherapy and ice in recovery. Very bad. It stops recovery. It is not the thing to do. You know how we used to say, you know, ice an injury, that was only to stop the pain in that moment. It actually stops the inflammation response, and the inflammation response is actually your body trying to bring, you know, white blood cells to clean and repair. So icing is not advised. I could share some information about that. So the ice bath is a kind of strange Scandinavian thing about heart rate. It's not for damaged tissues.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to end the recording, and
Happy New Year, everybody.
yeah,
New Year
Take good
to
care
you.
of yourselves.
Happy
Might
New
see you
Year.
again in the community.
Yeah, thank you.